Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is a dark monster known as Hayman. Harvest is the time of the year farmers fear the most, because that is when Hayman slips into their barns and waits for the right moment to enter their homes and curse them with eternal bad luck. Hayman, in my opinion, has one of the best designs for dark monsters, for all monsters honestly. Look at him, from his baby years to his teenage years to his adulthood, he has such a good design. However, Social Point sometimes has this tendency to make monsters with such a good design not so good. So anyways, let's get into his stats. Hayman has a power of 3,201. As of the time I'm recording this video, there are 30 dark legendary monsters, and having this power puts him in 21st place. So there's a handful of dark monsters that are way stronger than Hayman. His life is 27,445, and quite similar to his power, this puts him in 16th place. Meaning he's right around the middle, meaning he doesn't have the lowest life, but he also doesn't have a very high life. And his speed is 3,476, which is honestly one of the best things about Hayman. Of the 30 dark legendary monsters, this puts him in 5th place, tied with General Omniscient, so it's a really good speed. So a really quick summary, he has rather meh life, rather meh power, but a really good speed. But then we look at his trait, and it's immune to daze, which is not one of the best traits to have. To the best of my knowledge, not many dark monsters actually give out daze. Dark deny monsters have lots of possession skills and lots of stun skills, so one of those traits would have been better. Something like hardened would have obviously been better. Immune to daze, it's definitely not one of the best traits to have. But anyways, let's move on to Hayman's skills. We have Corn on the Cob and Let the Bedbugs Bite for his default skills. I'm going to ignore those and move on to Monsters of the Corn. It steals life from all targets, so it's an AoE attacking multiple enemies. It deals 60 damage, and it's a 100% lifesteal skill. This is a fantastic ultimate skill. It has a nice damage output of 60, it absorbs all of the damage, and it's an AoE. The only problem is, when you combine this with this monster's base power, it's not that good of a skill. But I guess you can argue that you can just give this monster some really high level runes, maybe some level 10 runes, and then he'll have no trouble taking anyone out. The only problem I have with his ultimate skill is that it is not special based, instead it is dark based. So even if you use this skill against a dark monster, you're going to be dealing less damage. I'm going to really quickly breeze through skills group 1. We have Serial Killer, 25 damage AoE. We have Night Lantern, 35 damage, 50% chance to Nightmare. These two skills, there's nothing really worth mentioning. But then we have this skill called Consciousness. Gives immunity to daze to our allies, requires cooldown. So it's a team skill, it costs 31 stamina and has a 2-turn cooldown. And this skill gives your whole team daze immunity. It would have been nice if it was a different kind of immunity, especially because of this monster's high speed, but unfortunately it's a daze immunity. And this is kinda odd because we saw from this monster's ultimate ability that it was an attack based ability, but then we look at this skill and it's a supportive skill. So in my opinion, there's no reason to run this skill. I have a feeling some of you may want to run it, but really I just don't see this skill being used. So now we move on to skills group 2, and we have a skill called Against the Grain. Entire allied team gains precision, requires cooldown. It's another team skill. It costs 29 stamina and has a 2-turn cooldown, and basically all of your team gets increased accuracy. Now if this skill would have given your team double damage, or heck even a 50% damage boost, I would have said this monster is a lot better, but unfortunately it just gives them increased accuracy. Again, it's another support based skill, but also another skill not worth running, so you can do without Against the Grain. Next we have a skill called Grain Drain. Deals heavy dark damage, applies stamina leak to target, requires cooldown. You target a single enemy, you dish out 50 damage, it costs 28 stamina, and has a 2-turn cooldown. So this is kind of a combination of a control skill as well as an attack based skill. So it deals a nice amount of damage, 50, and it also gives the enemy stamina leak. Stamina leak will take away 50% of energy for 3 turns. And this is actually the first skill I recommend running on this monster. So now we move down to Opaque Husk. Becomes immune to light element for 3 turns, requires cooldown. It's a self skill, it costs 34 stamina, and has a 3-turn cooldown. Now even though the description says immune to light element for 3 turns, down here below the description it says immune to dark. And I think currently in the game it is immune to dark. And because of that I actually would recommend running this skill. Because this monster is dark, if you ever use him in Team Wars, you're going to be going up against other dark monsters. So it'd be really good to have an immunity to dark. But also keep in mind that lots of dark monsters also have a really strong special based skill. And if that's the case, a dark monster with strength runes using a special based skill, they can probably easily take out Hayman. Because you have an immunity to dark attacks for 3 turns, it's still a pretty good skill. So be sure to run Grain Drain as well as Opaque Husk. And that moves us down to skills group 3. In skills group 3 we have a skill called Pinkinata. Applies 1 random negative effect to all targets, removes all positive status effects from target, requires cooldown. So this skill targets a single enemy, it deals no damage, it costs 28 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. I really wish this skill would have been an AoE instead of attacking a single enemy, or I wish it would have dealt some more damage, or at the very least if it applied 2 random negative effects instead of 1 random negative effect. I guess it's nice that it removes all positive status effects from the target, but still it's really not a good skill. But all that being said, I would still probably run this skill as opposed to other skills he has. In fact, you never know, if you land that 1 random negative effect, that could mean the difference between a victory or a loss. Moving on, he has a skill called Harvest Season. Deals heavy dark damage. It attacks a single enemy with 50 damage, it costs 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown. So really the only reason you'd want to run this skill is if you're really concerned about Timerion doing cooldowns activated, but I honestly don't think Hayman is a monster you want to be using in war. Especially if you have a choice to use a dark monster, you'd probably be using someone like Krampus, Mommy, well, Razorface. There's so many other monsters. Even if you needed someone who's an attacker, there's Barbatos, there's General Nisha. There's just so many monsters to choose from that are far superior to Hayman that I really don't see a place where you would want to choose them. Even in something like player versus player, I don't see Hayman being used much. But yeah, ultimately I really don't see the point in running Harvest Season, especially when you have a skills in skills group 2 called Grain Drain, which deals the same amount of damage and it applies stamina leak. The only difference is that this skill does have a 2-turn cooldown, but that's fine because when we look back to skills group 3 and we look at his final skill, High Fructose Life Syrup, it steals life from the target, requires cooldown, so you target a single enemy, it dishes out 60 damage for 25 stamina, and it has a 1-turn cooldown. So this is a really good skill. Nice damage output, steals life, 100% of life, a really low stamina cost, and a really low cooldown. The only problem I would have with this skill is that it is dark as opposed to being special based. So again, if you go up against a dark monster, you're not going to deal as much damage, meaning you won't recover as much life, but nonetheless, it's still a good skill. So my recommended moves for this monster would be High Fructose Life Syrup, Pumpkin Yada, Opaque Husk, Grain Drain, and if you guys don't even want to run Pumpkin Yada and you want to run Harvest Season instead, just to have more offensive attacks, you can totally do that. Because when you look at Pumpkin Yada, it deals no damage and you're really just relying on luck. You're relying that that 1 random negative effect can be some immobilizing skill or something else. But yeah, when we look at other skills, Against the Grain deals no damage, Conscientiousness also deals no damage. The only other skill he has that is special based that deals damage would be Serial Killer, and that's only a 25 damage AoE. So overall, I'm not really sure what to say on this monster. It's almost like he's supposed to be an attacker, except he doesn't do a really good job at that. And it's almost like he's supposed to be a supportive monster, but he also doesn't really do a good job at that. For runes on this monster, I would probably say run a life rune, run a strength rune, and run a speed rune or a team speed rune. I don't see any point of using all speed on this monster because he has no deny skills, and I don't see the point of giving this monster 2 or 3 strength runes when yes, he does have some offensive attacks, but he has a really low power. Those strength runes that you're gonna give on Hayman, they're honestly better going to some other monster, someone like General Nishan, someone like Barbatos, really any other dark monster attacker. And that's actually going to conclude my analysis on Hayman. Again, not really the best monster, possibly one of the worst monsters. But with all that being said, thank you to everyone who made it to the end of the video. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, or just dislike the video if you thought it was a complete waste of your time. But more importantly, I want you guys to comment below what you guys think of this monster. Do you think he's awesome? Do you agree with me and think he's not one of the best monsters? Do you think he's okay? Do you think he's average? Do you think he's amazing? Or do you think that we all need to band together and riot and demand to Social Point that they buff his skills or buff his stats? But anyways, I hope everyone has a great day. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.